It's a question that's been asked since WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange first appeared on the scene 15 years ago. Is he a criminal that hacks the accounts of governments and individuals he wants to expose, or is he a symbol of the free press and the public's right to know? After his arrest, the question lingers. After 7 years of asylum in Ecuador's embassy in London, Julian Assange was unceremoniously hauled out.
Bearded and bedraggled, pointing and yelling.
Assange is charged with conspiring to hack into a government computer and publishing documents and video provided by former Army intelligence analyst Chelsea Manning.
Like this video, which shows American helicopters firing on civilians in Iraq.
But Assange was not charged under the Espionage Act, something journalists feared could put a chill on First Amendment freedoms, bolstering arguments from Assange's lawyers that he is simply a journalist.
He's a publisher, just like CNN is, and he gets information from sources, as all good journalists do.
That, of course, is a matter of debate.
WikiLeaks is really a non-nation-state hostile intelligence service.
Former intelligence chief James Clapper also says most traditional news organizations would contact intelligence before going to press.
They would at least give us, the intelligence community, the opportunity to comment and make the case for not publishing something.
But since the U.S. is trying to extradite Assange to possibly face further charges, Assange's lawyers say all journalists should worry.
This precedent means that any journalist can be extradited for prosecution in the United States for having published truthful information about the United States.
In other words, the end justifies the means. Callie, talk about something we've talked about 100 times here. I mean, this guy kind of walks the line between being an activist and a journalist. Sometimes he spills over, sometimes he's right on the edge of it. He's targeted the Obama administration, he targeted Hillary Clinton, he's targeted subjects that he wants to expose. So he's selective. A lot of journalists are. That's how the business works, and it's become more and more divided that way. But he hasn't really done anything that I would put in the repertorial category. He's very good at this. I mean, nobody else knows how. I don't know how to break into some government computer and release documents, but I wouldn't put him in the journalism category.
No, I wouldn't put him in the journalism category, but he has performed some acts of journalism. And I think the more important consideration here is there isn't really any First Amendment way that you can draw a line between what the New York Times and the Washington Post does and what WikiLeaks does. I'm talking about 2010. Later on, he may have become a Russian asset as far as we know.
Yes.
But earlier on, so I think that this is very dangerous for the First Amendment.
I disagree, Dan. I don't have any problem with drawing a line. He is not a journalist.
No.
Now, some of what he has done has become journalism, produced by journalists, but I think the line is where he is breaking into other places to get information. That is not what WikiLeaks was set up to do. WikiLeaks was going to be a platform where people who had information that was being suppressed could come out and it would be like the Pentagon Papers. When and that, I think, does make itself at least available for journalism to happen. But when you then start breaking in, that's like a reporter breaking into the Watergate and taking Democratic Party's papers and then reporting it. That would not be something that's acceptable. And I think that's where Julian Assange has crossed the line, and I don't think he's a journalist at all.
Well, that's the charge. It's in dispute.
I think that that's the appropriate charge, actually.
Well, go ahead, Callie.
No, I was going to say, I don't think anybody on this panel thinks he's a journalist. I don't. But I'm following what Dan said, and that is he has practiced journalism. See, that's where we get into that little sticky wicket, because for the rest of us who are practicing journalism on a regular basis and are journalists, we're getting caught up in his mess. And he's an unpleasant fellow on top of that, so it makes it hard to defend him on the issues that are of concern to journalists. Certainly, nobody on this panel would suggest let's go crack a code into a computer. But if somebody has cracked the code and comes to you and says, "Hey, here's some stuff," we would do what Clapper or whatever said: follow up and do all the requisite kinds of stuff you're supposed to do. That's journalism, but that's not what the where the charge is coming down. So it gets it's a little worrisome, you know.
Yeah, I mean, this guy's a sketchball. He's later in life became a Russian asset. I think the evidence is pretty solid on that. He's not someone that anyone should call a hero. However, and as much as I don't trust our government as far as I can throw it to give a damn about the First Amendment and freedom of speech and the freedom of the press. And by the way, the First Amendment doesn't just apply to journalists, right? That's an important point.
Right.
I mean, even Edward Snowden has denounced this guy as having gone too far and not exercised editorial oversight over the material he dumps. I think maybe the bigger threat is that sketchballs like this can use the title of journalist to help themselves avoid accountability.
All right, Dan, you want to defend yourself?
We all agree that Julian Assange is not a nice person by any means. You know, we're going to have to see how the case plays out. I mean, the fact is, no, he's not protected from hacking into government computers, and that's what he's been charged with. But the fact is, the Obama administration looked into those charges and declined to bring charges.
But they still may come.